Welcome to the ThunderCast, your martial athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hudnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast. You can follow us on Twitter at ThunderCast_pod. It is the position group breakdown series continuing this week for the 2025 Marshall Thundering Herd, your Sun Belt Conference champion, Marshall Thundering Herd.
Right,
this
baby.
week, we're going with the offensive line. Last week, we did the coaching staff and got everybody familiarized with this new look 2025 Herd coaching staff, including first-year head coach Tony Gibson and everybody that's on staff along with him. This week, we're diving into our first actual position group, and it's going to be the offensive line. We talk about it a lot, oftentimes, more often than not, and almost always. As the offensive line goes, so goes your offense. And this offense is predicated on speed, running the football. You're going to have a strong offensive line to make that happen. So I think we should get to know everybody and all the moves that have happened in multiple portal cycles and all of that good stuff. So if you don't mind, let's get into it with a quick word from our sponsors at Leasure Oliver PLLC.
If you've been hurt in a wreck, call the law firm of Leasure Oliver PLLC. Find them at 304carwreck.com.
Okay, Russ, it is not the sexiest group to talk about, but perhaps one of the top two most important, maybe top three most important, if you think it's number three. Offensive line. Gut feeling before we get into it, before we talk about the particulars, what is your temperature on the offensive line versus last year?
Last year was a breakout surprise, in my opinion. And we had some players go pro, so all-timer left. It's one guy returning, from that stellar group from last year. So it's kind of an unknown, but I am shockingly bullish and calm on this offensive line group, and I hope that as we do this breakdown, I can convey why I am.
Well, I am cautiously optimistic, which is a term that I continually use in position group breakdowns, because at this point in time, there's not a lot of information out there. There's just not a lot for you to form a legitimate opinion. I mean, you see a glorified practice kind of thing for spring game, and then guys make moves and you bring guys in, and you really don't know. The only things that you do know are the guys that you had on the roster last year that actually played and performed. So I'm with you. This is almost like a rinse and repeat scenario from a year ago. It was a lot of moves in the portal, and we had to hope this offensive line worked, and we had questions last year, and geez, I hope it works. And it feels like, rinse and repeat. Got one big contributor that's coming back and going to be on that offensive line, a couple of guys who have played a little bit of ball for the Herd in a reserve role. By and large, it's 4 of the 5 are going to be new starters along the offensive line. So let's talk about the coach, Bob McLean. He's in his first season. Obviously, if you listen to the coaching breakdown last week, you know that he's been around for a while. He's been at Illinois. He's been at West Virginia. He's been over a decade of experience at the FBS level, nearly a decade at the FCS levels and D2. So he's coached with our current coaches in other places. There's familiarity there. It's not like they just picked the name out of a hat and it's like, come and coach the offensive line. And you made a great point, if you would like to reiterate that, about the specifics of this group and the offense you're trying to run. So, and why Bob McLean might have gotten the nod.
Yeah. So, Bob McLean was there in the Pat White, Steve Slayton heyday at WVU with Rod Smith and with, Tony Gibson was there at some point as well too. So there's familiarity, and you would think that they would want to bring in a guy that is going to have that same kind of coaching thing that they need to run this Rod Smith offense. But he was there at Illinois when Rod Smith was there at Illinois. There is a familiarity there, and they are going to want to bring in someone when they have the keys to the offense for the first time with no shadow over them, is what I said, the looming shadow. You're going to want to bring in somebody that's going to do that. And obviously, if they have that on the short list, is what I said, for how quickly this staff came together, he had to have been on the short list. He was brought in here for a reason. So you have to think that he knows exactly what to do with this style offense.
Yeah, exactly right. And you might be thinking, well, then why wasn't he a piece of the pie at Jacksonville State? Well, it's because you have one of the greatest offensive line coaches in the history of college football in Rick Trickett down there. Mm-hmm. And the man's a living legend, and that's, you're just not going to supplant a living legend, an offensive line guru like Rick Trickett. So Bob McLean was at California, PA last year, and now he makes his way to Huntington for the Herd. Let's talk about returning starters. Now, this is going to get a little technical here real quick, but technically, there are 3 returning starters. Those 3 guys are Eric Meeks. He had 1 start last year. Sean Marcus Adams, also 1 start last year. And then the one everybody is familiar with that also Herd fans collective sigh of relief when he kind of was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. And that's Jalen Slappy, 13-game starter last year for the Herd. Started, I don't know how many his freshman year or redshirt freshman year.
He came in halfway through. I
was going to say half. Yeah, it felt like half. So he started a lot of games. And a 13-game returning starter is really the anchor that you need on this Herd offensive line. A handful of guys exhausted some eligibility. Of course, all-time Herd great now. Campus legend Logan Osborne is gone. Jeremy Jones hits the NFL ranks. Bryce Ramsey, Elijah Ellis, Cedric Nicely. All those guys were one-and-dones for the Herd. In here, did a job, won a title, and exhausted some eligibility. And then you move into the portal out. I was really expecting to have to write a laundry list of portal ins and portal outs, and there's not a whole lot based on all the moves that were made from this team in and out. Portal out, Lucas Copenhaver, Traden Henry, Andrew Hancock, Anwar Smith. That's it. 4 guys out. Portal in, Peyton Ellis comes to the Herd, 6'6", 310 from East Texas A&M. Bryce Biggs, 6'4", 305, comes to the Herd from WVU. He's a senior, local kid, Spring Valley High School, by the way. Evan Ferguson comes to the Herd from Gardner-Webb, 6'2", 290. If that name sounds familiar, it should. Also another local kid, but he happens to be the son of Marshall, all-time great, perhaps the most decorated collegiate offensive lineman in Marshall history, Aaron Ferguson. Great to have that lineage back in Huntington, along with some of the other second-generation players that are finding their way on these rosters for the past couple of years. Then you get Morgan Scott, 6'5", 310, comes over from Middle Tennessee State. And then Tyler McDuffie, wow, 6'9", 365 pounds from Hampton. That's your portal in, guys, to this point as we record. Others on the roster left over from last year that stayed on the team from last year, Andrew Dudley, a freshman from 6'3", or their freshman in the recruiting class. Let's put it that way. Andrew Dudley, freshman, 6'3", 300. Eli Kaufman, 6'4", 280, also a freshman. Then a pair of guys have been here for a couple of years. Isaac Clary, redshirt sophomore, 6'7", 343 pounds. And Christian Richter, the redshirt junior, 6'6", 309 pounds. So all in all, not a whole lot of movement for this particular position group. Before we get into projected starters, you got any kind of lingering thoughts just out there before we get into something else?
Yeah. Give me the three that you said technical starters. I know you said Meeks and you had Slappy, and Meeks came in when Logan Osborne in that ODU game,
Right.
for that. But give me the third one.
Shamarcus Adams.
So I'm under the impression, maybe I'm wrong, that
Mhm.
Tariq Montgomery took over when we had a guy was starting, and I can't remember his name, but he left the program like 3 games in or something like that. Maybe 4 games in. I think Tariq Montgomery was a starter as well.
Let me, I went to all of these guys on the roster, and
Montgomery's years in his bio are missing. So it would have had the 23 and 24 seasons are not listed on there for anything where it says started how many games or participated.
Right.
But Tariq Montgomery, and my thinking, was also a starter last year, but he just was not the starter out of the gate because that other guy, he was from maybe not Baylor, but Texas Christian, TCU maybe.
Oh yeah.
And then he ended up leaving the team, getting kicked off the team.
Yeah. That's what it was. I went to Tariq. Obviously the name is, when a name looks familiar, like, okay, must have been here for a couple of years. And you're right. You go to click on the Herd Zone bio and it's like nothing except for his freshman year. So you may be absolutely correct. And if that's the case, I just don't know how many games he started.
I think it was 8. I think he started the conference schedule.
Okay, great. So that really helps me feel a lot better about this offensive line. If you were really looking at Jalen Slappy as the only returning starter with any meaningful time, not that any time is not meaningful, but you're talking about a 13-game starter versus a couple of guys that started 1 game. Then Tariq Montgomery feels right. I just can't be accurate with the game started. But I will tell you this: he's 6'5", 316, and a redshirt junior.
Yeah. So now, having said that, I feel a lot better, as you probably do as well. But Tariq Montgomery was a guy that I thought last year, because I went back last year to see my notes for this breakdown, and I had him as possibly winning that starting job out of the gate, and he didn't, because that guy from TCU, I believe it was. But I really think that just a quick heat check is we're going to have this be a strength. I said that earlier, and I'm kind of calm about this. Whereas last year I was a little worried about offensive line, and this year, for whatever reason, I'm not. And I don't know if that's because of the type of offense that we're bringing in, if it's because of a couple of returning starters that played well last year because we had such a good strength last year, or if it's a combination of that. But I'm shockingly calm.
Well, I'm not ready to jump out of my chair, but I just feel a lot better. Look, Jalen Slappy did a lot to alleviate my nervousness because he's a really good offensive lineman and a guy that's been doing it since he got to campus. He's been entrusted with starting games, and even when he wasn't starting games, he was like contributing. So he's almost immediate. So there's a hell of a lot of comfort that comes in that. But now when you toss in a guy like Tariq Montgomery that I just didn't have info on, man, it really helps to calm the nerves even more. It's that second shot of bourbon. It really helps.
I'll take 3.
Well, you need 5. 3 ain't going to do it here.
No, I mean 3 of those second shots of bourbon. I'll take those.
Okay.
Right?
All right. So that's what I mean. That really helps, right? Because I just didn't have the info. It felt familiar. It felt like, but you know how we are. You can't just throw out information that's inaccurate.
Right.
So saying that, let's move into projected starters and let's see how many we think we might be able to match up. Of course, I think we're both going to have Jalen Slappy right out of the gate, 6'4", 302, the redshirt junior, the 13-game returning starter. Who do you got for number 2?
Well, I've got him penciled in. I kind of did mine on where I thought they might be on the line, and I've got him at right guard because that's where he was last year. Yeah.
I didn't do that. I just did 5 because I don't know how it's going to play out.
Number 2, I have Tariq Montgomery, and I have him at right tackle. Is that who you had?
Well, I do now. I did because I didn't, since I had no information. I was making a quick check and I revamped my 5. But yes, Tariq Montgomery is now my second of 5 at the 6'5", 316-pound redshirt junior.
Third, I have Eric Meeks at center. When he came in for Logan Osborne, that's where he went in. He can play center or guard, and he has done both. He's played a lot more on special teams than he has on the line for offense. But he came in a lot in reserve, and he came in a lot as guard. He would come in and spell Bryce Ramsey or Jalen Slappy last year. But I have him at center this year because of the experience that he has at that position.
Yep, 3 for 3. I also have Eric Meeks, the 6'3", 307-pound redshirt senior, who's also the kick return specialist that you remember, not just the 17-yard kick return. Also in the portal and out of the portal a couple years ago. So glad he decided to stick around. I think he's going to be the middleman in this offensive line this year. He's waited his turn. I think he's going to get his shot this year, and I couldn't be happier for 3 guys. We're starting out with 3 guys that have been in the program multiple years that are going to be, we think, starting on this offensive line. And I think when you look at that in the past 3 years of college football, that's a little bit of an anomaly probably. Because if you're a high performer, you're out of there most of the time. So props to Slappy for staying around, which is cool. But also you see a lot of one-and-done guys come in. I need an offensive lineman for 1 year, and you're back out. Like, Jones and Ramsey and Ellis and nicely in and out for us, but they did their job. Who's your number 4 that you got penciled in?
Well, over at left guard, I got Sean Marcus Adams, and he is a very big body, and he did get that one start, as you mentioned, last year. He played a lot in reserve and a lot on special teams, but I've got him penciled in on the left guard.
Well, this is where we differ. Not that there's anything against Sean Marcus Adams. He's been in the program for a couple of years, started a game for the Herd. I started looking at, you're bringing in guys that they're one and dones. So you're not going to come somewhere where you don't think you're going to be able to immediately compete and play. So I went with Morgan Scott, the Middle Tennessee transfer, 6'5", 310, redshirt junior, but I don't think that means multiple years, honestly. I thought I read in his commitment tweet, or maybe it was you wrote on the website, that he had 1 year of eligibility left. So maybe that's what made me lean towards that. But I'm going with Morgan Scott. Who's your number 5?
Number 5 is the big man that we brought in from Hampton, Tyler McDuffie, 6'9". When he his commitment tweet was 6'9", 350. And then I've seen 6'9", 365, and I think maybe even 6'9", 371. I don't know where he's at right now. But wherever he's at, I've got him over at left tackle.
You're right. Also, that's my 5th. I've got Tyler McDuffie, the 6'9", 350 offensive lineman, the redshirt senior that comes over from Hampton. And I love to do the average height and weight across this projected starting 5. It's 6'5", 317. And you're kind of in that same group. It's an undersized line. It's that 350 that really shoots it up there. You've got a lot of guys. Everybody else is hovering between 300 and 310. So it's not a overly heavy line, but if you can play, you can play.
And if you went with mine, it's going to be skewed a little bit higher because Sean Marcus Adams is in that 340 something range.
Yeah. So if you're right, which you very well could be, a little bit heavier, but I think it's also going to come down to mobility and scheme. And, we just don't know what we're going to look at until they run out of the tunnel. And I don't think we're going to see a lot of it in week 1. You're not going to open up your playbook against Georgia. I mean, obviously you're going to try to win, but you ain't going to give it all away. So I'm not sure we'll know too much about what this Herd offense actually is until we get into conference play. I mean, they're not going to hold anything back and lose games just to, save it all for the SBC slate. But I think any good coach only exposes as much as you have to, to win those games. Let's talk about some strengths of this unit, Russ. What's your number one overall strength for this offensive line room in 2025?
Jalen Slappy returning. He announced that he was coming back, and I think when that happened, that is when my fears started easing away a little bit because I was a fan of his and he was playing very well and he worked his way into a starting position halfway through. I think it was the Coastal game that I was at, and even though we did not do very well against them at that game, it was his first start, if I'm remembering correctly, and that was around the halfway point or whatever. And then he was an absolute strength last year.
Mm-hmm.
So him coming back was a strength for me.
Yeah, well, honestly, I had that, and I thought that would be unique to me. Jalen Slappy was my number two strength overall. And you mentioned I wrote it down on the back. I was looking for it on the front of my page. 18 career starts in 26 games. So he's appeared in every game since he got on campus outside of the redshirt year. No, he played 2 games in his redshirt year, I think. And then, of course, 13 starts in 2024. Absolute strength. For the Herd offensive line. What's your number two?
Size, and it's not just amongst the starters because you look at Christian Rickner, 6'6". You look at Isaac Clary, 6'7", 340 something, 343, I think it was, and then Marcus Adams is a huge body there at guard. Tyler McDuffie, the king of all of them, at 6'9", but just Morgan Scott, 6'5". Peyton Ellis, not 210. That's coming in as I had him with a typo. But Bryce Biggs is a big guy. Morgan Scott is a big guy. I feel like we have some good size, but it's not just the height and weight. And I want to kind of get into another part of that with size later because it has something else to do with it. So I'm not just talking about the numbers. There's a specific thing about the size.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's my number 3. We still haven't nailed my number 1 strength, but my number 3 is the size of this unit. 11 of 12 offensive linemen listed on the roster currently are 6'3" or taller. 9 of 12 are 305 pounds or heavier. 8 of the 12 are 6'3", 305 or larger. 4 of those 8 are projected starters, and the only one that isn't is Jalen Slappy, and he's 302. So he missed it by 3 pounds, or else all 5 of the guys that we project to be starters meet that criteria. This is a sizable unit. There's none of those 6 foot 275 guys. There's you got a couple of 6'2" dudes in there, but hey, man, that towers over me. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of these guys got me by 100 pounds. I mean, I'm not an offensive lineman, not even close. But this is a very sizable unit across the entire room. So I would not want to be in charge of the food budget for the offensive line room because these guys are built to play some ball. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is that the style of offense that I expect us to play is going to favor the offensive line. I felt like it was that way last year, and we talked about that on multiple occasions. I feel like it's going to be the same. There's going to be a lot of runs, so there's less pass protection, giving up sacks sort of things, because I expect us to have a higher percentage of running to passing. But also on our passing, I believe that we're going to be making quick reads, getting the ball out of the hand very quickly, which is something we talked about last year. So I think the style of offense is going to favor our offensive line. It will reduce the chances for holds because the plays are not going long enough for them to get beaten. They're not going to be giving up as many sacks. That will become a huge strength in my mind.
So oddly enough, my number 4 strength for this unit is the quarterback and running back rooms, right? For all the reasons you just laid out. I think that you're looking at a quicker pace of play, which means you don't have to hold blocks longer. But you are going to be tasked with being a little bit more mobile. You're going to be tasked with probably pulling a little bit more. So some of these guys might be doing some things that is a little bit new, but if you're going to hit the portal for 1-year guys, you're going to get guys that know what you need to do, and they're really good at it. You know, you're not just going out there and go, hey, we got scholarships available for offensive linemen. You're going to have those conversations about, you're watching film about, oh, this guy pulls really well. I love how he blocks it. We do a lot of this. We do a lot of that. This guy fits our mold. So but the quarterback and running back rooms accentuate your offensive line. It's really a synergistic relationship as this year as more so than I felt like it would have been last year, if that makes sense. Do you have a fourth?
No, I don't. That was the only three I have.
Okay. Well, I didn't. My number one overall strength is the experience level of this unit as a whole. Now, no, they haven't played a lot of football together, but 9 of the 12 on the roster are redshirt juniors or higher. So you're talking about redshirt juniors, seniors, redshirt seniors. 3/4 of the offensive linemen are redshirt juniors or above. That's a lot of football. That's a lot of collegiate football. You know, that's a lot of college weight rooms and off seasons and all these things that we continually talk about that still every year people forget about. That's an insane.
Listen, 2 years on the scout team and special teams is a lot better than an incoming freshman. You know,
yes. I mean, respectfully, it just is. It's a different game. Now, some of these guys have played some really high-level high school football against some highly recruited people. You know, for example, Andrew Dudley, the freshman coming, he was at IMG Academy, right? That is a prolific high school football program, but still, it might play in a number of positions like college football.
Yeah,
but it's still not a college football program.
Yeah,
right?
And you're not on a college football schedule when you're at one of the. It might be very, very similar, but it's just totally different. You know, you're on your own for the first time in your life. You're eating differently. You have to juggle classes. You have all this different stuff. You know, you're traveling a lot differently. The weight room is differently. I've said this before, but his older brother and I served as his parents going to Seth Cook's football banquet here when he came. He was coming in as a true freshman. And Seth, as you know, is a very large human being. And he came in and was dwarfing Jamie and I, who are both pretty big guys. And the coaches looked at him at that banquet and everything. And they're like, oh man, you're going to have to put on some weight, going to have to put on some size. And but that's the way I feel like anybody that comes in as an 18, even 19-year-old or whatever, they're still going to be growing into that body. And if you have all these redshirt juniors that you're talking about, they've already done a lot of that growing. They've matured. They've gotten stronger. It's not just about the size. I guarantee you, as strong as Isaac Clary was in high school, he's a lot stronger now.
Exactly. That's the point. That's the point. A lot of these youngsters haven't reached their potential by a country mile. You know, there's a lot. I mean, you got a daggone offensive line frame. That usually means you got a lot of room to grow into it. And the analogy, the story you just told about Seth is a perfect example of that. He's this big dude as it is. And then you got coaches saying, you got to get bigger, son. You know, like, holy shit. All right. Weaknesses. What's your number one weakness overall with this unit?
So it's an all new offense with a lot of new players. And, that's just one of those things is it's new. You know, we can't sit here and say, well, we got the same offense that we had last year and 4 of the starters are returning. It's not like that, you know, so there's going to be a learning curve and things like that. And that to me has got to be a weakness.
Yeah. So my number 2 overall weakness is that it's a new offensive system. Even for the guys that have remained in the program, it's all new to them. All new terminology, all new everything. It's not, there's zero familiarity from year over year. It's all brand new. And that's got to be a glaring weakness. I don't care how good you are and how talented you are. You still have to be able to put it together. You still have to be able to effectively communicate and learn terminologies and plays and all that good stuff. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is how long is it going to take them to gel? You know, if you hit that mark around conference, that's fine. But if it takes like 3-4 games into the conference before they're really playing as one unit instead of 5 individual people, and they have the starters in the positions that they want and everything, but they're still just not playing Hey, I can feel when that guy's getting beat, so I can chip that guy as he's coming in. Until they gel, they're not going to be firing on all cylinders. How long is that going to take? I feel like that's got to be a weakness because they are starting out game one, the first time they will ever play with each other. Again, it's not 5 returning guys that know kind of how each other are.
Yeah, that's my number one weakness. Actually, you just worded it a little differently, but it's the lack of time playing together, and it's an offensive line at times is a lot about feel. You can sense the and timing. It's feel and timing. You can hold your block, but you need to be able to know already and be comfortable with how long does the man to my left and my right. How long are they good for theirs until, we got to make something else happen. But we did this last year, so it's the good news is you don't show up in Athens, Georgia on week 1, never having practiced, and you look horrible. Like you get a whole off season and summer sessions and things like this to be able to find that cohesive unit. But to your point, we've seen in years past the right 5 be on the field, but in the wrong positions.
Yeah.
And then they've got to shuffle the right 5 and the right. It's very much a chess game. And how long will it take for them to figure that out? And then once you figure it out, how long do they stay healthy? It's tough. But that's number 1, the lack of playing time together. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is just like Marshall is known for its defensive line and wreaking havoc. There are a lot of different teams in the Sun Belt that are built very similarly. James Madison has always had someone on the defensive line that wreaks havoc, and they're not anywhere near the only team that does so. You can look up and down the rosters and the stats year after year, not just last year, but some high sack individuals, some high quarterback pressure individuals. And we're going to face that a lot in the Sun Belt. That's 8 of our 12 games. And oh, by the way, we've got Georgia opening up. So these guys could take a beating. And I'm hoping that wear and tear and there will be no major injuries or whatever because they're just getting, all these guys that they're going up against are going to be beasts. That may sound like 101 level football and, they have to expect that. But I feel like this conference and in the East Division, we have a lot of guys and a lot of teams that are standouts on that rush linebacker or edge or, the big guy up the middle that just kill offensive linemen.
Well, that's a good point, because while I don't take this philosophy and I don't think a lot of people agree with it, you can go 0-4 in the out of conference and still go to a conference championship game. It's not the route you want to take, right? So, but week 1, you're going in and facing all intents and purposes a NFL caliber everything.
Yeah.
Most guys from that Georgia team could probably make a roster in the NFL. And definitely along the defensive line and the linebacking core, so it's more than just a tall task and a big ask. It's like, let's try to get out of here healthy. Like we want to go win the damn football game. Wouldn't that shock the world? Absolutely. It would shock the world. But at the same time, if you find yourself in an extremely unfavorable position on the scoreboard, what do you do? What do you do? You're trying to protect your players at that point when the game is out of hand. So it's pretty scary. My number 3 weakness, and I don't know, some might view this as a strength. I don't know. The percentage to me doesn't feel good. Only 6 of 12 or 6 of 12 are new to Marshall. So 50% of the guys didn't step foot in the building before this year. 6 of them have been here, which is great. But we expect only 2 of those guys to be, 3 of those guys to be starters on the line. So that percentage is good. But overall in the room, it's half of them are new to the herd. I don't know if some people might say, hey, that ain't bad. Could be 80%. Well, it could be. But I would love to see more than 50% of the guys from year over year remain here, especially on the offensive line. You got any more?
Nope.
Okay, let's move into the questions because this is the fun part.
Okay.
Who's the hardest to replace from this offensive line that performed really well last
Well,
year.
when you talk about multiple people in the NFL, you got some decisions to make, but I'm going with Logan Osborne, and it's because he was the captain of that offensive line. He was here year after year. He was a local guy. He was a Marshall guy through and through. He was one of those guys that was here from freshman through senior, and we talked about all that and how rare that is going to be moving forward. So for me, it's overwhelmingly Logan Osborne. And that just goes to show you that we're not picking two guys that are on NFL rosters right now.
Yeah, and you're right for all of those reasons, but he was also a really high-performing offensive lineman. But in this day and age, when it's I don't want to call it loyalty because that's not really a fair word to use, but the opportunities that are out there are so appealing, and it's really easy to transfer out, and it's really easy to go. A guy like Logan that chose to stay is more important to me than maybe he allowed one or two extra sacks than the guy to the left or the right of him did, right? Because he's a guy that fans can rally around and can believe in and can get to know, and that's a little bit more important to me in this era of college football than, well, he allowed 2 more sacks than this guy beside him. Like, don't care. Like, nobody got hurt. Right? We got up and played the next snap. So those sacks were just sacks. It was just a negative play. All the other intangible things that we talked about are more important to me, and that's why he's the hardest to replace for me too. Number 2, who are you most excited to see on this offensive line in 2025?
This one was tough for me, but I'm picking Jalen Slappy just because he feels like the guy that is going to be the elder statesman now, not only because of how long he's been here, but he's the most tenured starter. But he has been here, if I'm thinking correctly, this is the 3rd offensive line coach in 3 years that he will have had while he has started for those. So I am just most excited to see him continue to develop into what I think is a stalwart on that offensive line.
Yeah, it's a good point. I got to ask you, though, are we sure it's not 4 offensive line coaches in 3 years? We lost one 3 games into the season, remember?
No, that was 22.
Well, he wasn't a fresh. That was not his red shirt year.
Yeah, but that one, these last 3. I'm talking about this year coming will be his 3rd as a starter because he wasn't a starter in 22.
I got you. Yeah, most excited to see for me too. It's absolutely Jalen Slappy because he's a very good offensive lineman, one of the best in the Sun Belt Conference, and he remained with the herd. So I think that my personal fan excitement should go to the guys that are giving remaining at my school. The guys that we want to stay are staying. So I feel like I owe them, all the excitement, right? I got to match that energy. You're doing me a solid by staying. I'm matching that energy and going to remain very excited to watch you play. Who's your breakout player?
This was also a difficult one for me, but I settled on Sean Marcus Adams, and that's because I have him in that left guard starting position. I feel like he is a big body. He's going to break out and both earn that starting position, but also at the same time be that guy that everybody looks at and is like, hey, wow, I just kind of was pleasantly surprised by him. Because again, you don't even have him as starter, and I do, so that's why I kind of have him as the breakout.
Yeah, good point. I do not have him as a starter, but I'm choosing someone in the same realm. I'm going Eric Meeks because he's the guy that we're penciling in to be the center. He's the guy that touches the damn football on every single play. So this is a big opportunity for him to break out. And in recent history, Marshall's had a really good lineage of solid centers. Mm-hmm. And Eric Meeks, even if it is just for one season, maybe gets to stamp his name alongside the rest of the really good, reliable, reliable is about the best word you can use when you talk about an offensive lineman, like somebody you can really lean on. And if Eric Meeks can put his name in that column of guys that we talk about when we talk about good centers, like the Levi Browns and the Chris Jasperses and, the Jason Starkeys and all these guys that just were phenomenal, that adds up to breakout. in my opinion. So that being said, who's your MVP at the end of it all?
MVP is Jalen Slappy, and I think he has the head start, I guess you would say, because he started every game last year, and since he took it over mid-season of the prior year, he's been there. So I feel like he's going to continue that. He's going to be kind of the on-field captain, coach, whatever of the offensive line, and that's why I'm giving him the MVP.
Yeah, me too, right? And I think you have to take on a little bit more of a leadership role because you're the guy in the program that has done it the most for the program, right? So I think you kind of have to take on a little bit more of a leadership role. He's an upperclassman-ish, he's not a senior, but close enough. And you're looking at an all-conference caliber offensive lineman with a good year. So,
yeah.
I don't know how many of these other guys that I can point to and go definite offensive lineman, all Sun Belt offensive lineman. I don't know because none of them have either played for Marshall or played a lot of football for Marshall. Jalen's the only guy that has done it to the level that he's done it for as much as he's done it. The close second would probably be Tariq Adams or Terry Montgomery, but we don't know, right? New question this year you posed to me, and I think it's a great idea. How about a sleeper? Who's the sleeper pick that we're leaving out right now that might be the guy that we're like, man, we missed on that one. He was a bona fide starter. He found his way. Maybe he's the Montgomery of this year. Who's your sleeper?
So I almost had him for breakout player. I almost had him as a starter, and I almost had him as most excited to see. With all three of those things happening, it's Isaac Clary. 6'7", 343. He's a local kid, just up the road in the Gallipolis area.
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, maybe it's 3 now, but when he first committed and signed, a family member of his said that we got a good one. And, family's going to be biased, but he talked a little bit about it. He was 6'7", but he was not 343 at the time, like you were talking about growing into the body. But he said he's not only strong, like weight room strong, he's country boy strong. Okay. You and I both know what that means because we both know someone, and I'm not talking about a specific person because I know plenty of them. But there is a difference with when people are just strong before they even get into a weight room. So now he's even been in a college weight room for a couple of years and gotten that underneath him. But there's another reason. He was all Ohio on offensive line as a tackle. He also played basketball and scored 30 points a game. So he's got footwork. You don't score 30 points a game just because you're big and tall. You have to be able to do some stuff. You have to be able to run up and down the court. He's an athlete. Mm-hmm. So he's got footwork, technique, athlete, probably a lot of stamina playing basketball. You can't score 30 points a game if you're only in for 5 minutes. So, at his size, he was still running up and down the court. I feel like this might be one of those guys that I could see him coming in, not over McDuffie, who only has 1 year here to play and is 6'9" and 350 plus. But I could see him going in at guard from time to time because of his speed and athleticism. I could also see him getting that nod and maybe outplaying Montgomery, who started some last year. Mm-hmm. So I am really, really high on him. Almost had him as a breakout player for that reason, and I almost had him as most excited to see for that reason, and almost had him as a starter. So you wrap all that together, he's my sleeper.
Well, that's a pretty good pick, and I didn't prepare for this, but man, moving forward, this is one that I got to get in on because that's an intriguing thought process, and I doubt we'll have too many that match, mm-hmm. moving forward because of the sheer number of guys at positions. But that's a fun one, man. That is a fun topic, an excellent add to the 2025 series. Last question. Are we better in 2025 than we were in 2024?
Not in game one.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
It's Georgia.
No, but I mean, it doesn't matter who we were playing. If we were playing, reverse game 1 and game 2. I'm just saying, going into fall camp, coming out of fall camp, I don't feel like we are, because we had Logan Osborne, who had been here for 4 years and was a perennial starter. And then, you had Ellis is in the NFL. Slappy was here. Montgomery was here. I feel like last year we had more experience. Even though going into it, we were worried. Coming out of it, that was one of the best offensive lines we've had in a while as far as production, not giving up a lot of sacks, that sort of thing. I think that we really, really have the potential to get there, but right now we're not there. And it's not a huge fall off. I'm not talking about, we're doing – I just feel like right now these guys have something to prove and they're not there. But ask me that at the end of the year and I may say, no, we're better.
Yeah, well, we will probably revisit those sort of things, but I guess maybe the more accurate is it more accurate? Is this a conference championship caliber offensive line? Because we know that's what we had last year.
I think it is when you start looking. I mean, as we looked, I mean, it was only one start each, but 4 of my 5 starters had a start last year. Mm-hmm. When you look at Adams, Meeks, Slappy, and Montgomery, and then you bring in 6'9", 350 as your left tackle.
Well, that plays.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. That's the offensive line position group breakdown for 2025. Not nearly as much movement through the portal as you will expect to see from some of the other positions. Mm-hmm. I feel pretty good about the starting 5. I tell you what, we didn't even talk about depth. We named a lot of guys, but I feel good about the depth. You talk about Christian Richter and Isaac Clary, who's your sleeper, 2 really solid guys that have played for the Herd already and are big guys, 6'6", 309, 6'7", 343. And then you talk about some of those other guys that come in the portal. Peyton Ellis, that another big guy, 6'6", 310. Morgan Scott, Tyler McDuffie, we think will start. Bryce Biggs, West Virginia guy, 6'4", 305. There's a lot of potential good depth there as well. So it's not an issue we even touched, but I feel good about it. Yeah. Give me some final thoughts on this offensive line if you have any. If not,
I do.
Take us out of here.
Yeah, so we talked about a lot of stuff, but a couple of things that we didn't. That earlier I was talking about size, and it wasn't just about the numbers on the roster. I feel like versatility is kind of coveted in this, and by that I mean people that can be center and play guard and vice versa. You have that in Meeks. I feel like you have that in a couple of other guys here as well. But the people that might be able to go like an Isaac Clary or a Shun Marcus Adams, being the size that they are, that maybe they could switch and do this. And I feel like that you're going to need to do this because I feel like we're going to be running a lot. And I feel like as we're running a lot that we don't want to tire out our offensive line. So I feel like we're going to be changing running backs. When we get to that room, we'll talk about that. I think you're going to see a lot of subbing on the line as well, and keeping guys fresh. And that depth that you just talked about, I think, is going to play very big. I see us, the 2 deep, being very important because of that reason. But, you've got McDuffie out there, 6'9", 350. If we need to go with a speed offensive line, he's probably not going to be out there in a couple of those series. If we're trying to go up tempo, running quickly and stuff. Not saying he's a bad offensive lineman. I'm saying that size, it's going to be a lot harder on his body than it is somebody that's 6'3", 310. Yeah. So I see us having that versatility and switching people in and out. I think, Slappy is more than talented to do it. Montgomery's more than talented to do it. The quickness and the footwork that Clary has, I feel like he's able to do it. So that's just some of the reasons that I'm a little more bullish and not as concerned, is because of the style of the play and the depth that we have to be able to do this.
And it's a good point, right? Because we're guilty of this too. We just put so much emphasis on that data point of starts, as if you put an offensive lineman in and he never comes out, right? We know that's a farce. You
Sure.
need a lot of depth. You need a lot of depth, and guys need to be able to rotate in and rotate out. And we saw that in 2024's team. There was a lot of rotating of offensive linemen, and you didn't see a big drop off in production. The offense, for what it could do, kind of kept doing it, you know?
Mhm.
So we just put this emphasis on returning starters and starts, but when in actuality, I wish there was a data point that you could find that was snaps, how many snaps you played, but you just don't have that available. There's nobody really breaking it down like that, but still, we've got guys that have played plenty of football. If you look at these daggone bios, you'll say mostly in reserve duty. Well, that doesn't mean they're standing there watching. You know, these guys are banging heads out there and doing the dirty work as well. So,
arguably, you know, finish a game is more important than starting a game. If it's a tight game and everything, what's it matter who were the first 5 that went out there in that series, but who are your 5 that are out there to get those crucial first downs on your final drive to win the game?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, a start is literally the first play for 5. So it could all change one play into the game, and it's going to go down as reserve duty. But I'm just saying, I feel okay. I don't know that we're done. I don't feel in this world of college football, I don't feel comfortable saying in any position group at any time until the season actually starts that we're done, because you can add anybody up until, you know, there's couple days before the game. We've seen that happen already. So I'm not going to sit here and say, yep, we're 100% done in the offensive line. But what I will say is the later we go, if we're adding pieces, it becomes a tad more worrisome to me, because that means maybe they see something that we don't see and they got to rectify something. But for now, I'm good. If we don't add another piece, I'm good.
I am too.
Got anything else? Let me have it. If not, take that.
That's it. So whether you see us at the Cam, whether you see us at the Vet, or whether you see us at the Jack, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd. It's the ThunderCast.
Go Herd. It's the position group breakdown series in full swing already in 2025. Join us next week. We're talking about special teams. A lot of turnover in this group. It'll be interesting. Later.